It's been quite a year following last year's prices, both prices and weather. An extremely warm, dry winter and early spring. Saw moisture showing up in late spring and it really hasn't quit. Most of the agriculture areas in Alberta have received ample to lots of rain. Harvest is sketchy. Most areas I'm hearing are having trouble trying to get both the hay and the grain off. It'll come, it always does. By fall meeting time, we hope the harvest is completed and winter comes back to normal.
We have seen really sharp declines in prices this year from the peaks in 2015. Some are calling it the biggest price correction in their memory. By August, calf prices had declined by 39% and fed cattle prices had declined by 30% from the peaks. These are the second largest percentage drops in prices over the last 30 years. And analysts are expecting that the downward trend in prices could continue for the next couple of years. Downward prices are never good news, but it is important to remember that these declines have come from all-time record peaks, and prices are still higher than they've been for most of the past 25 years. It is also important to note that the upward price swings of 2014 and 15 were partially driven by a unique shortage in all three major proteins, beef, pork, and poultry in North America. Now, increased pork and poultry production, aggressive expansion of the U.S. cow herd, and reduced Canadian feeder cattle exports are contributing to large increases in protein production that are putting significant downward pressure on prices. After the tremendous uproar caused by the introduction of Bill 6, the Enhanced Protection for Farm and Ranch Workers Act last November, the Government of Alberta established 6 working groups to provide consultation on the regulations and standards that will support the implementation of Bill 6. All of these working groups have producer representatives on them, some of them nominated by ABP, and we are hoping that the working groups will provide sound advice to the government on employment standards, occupational health and safety codes, labor relations, best practices, education, and training. ABP is a founding member of the Ag Coalition, an unprecedented group of close to 30 boards, commissions, and associations that work on behalf of over 97% of the farmers and ranchers in Alberta. The Ag Coalition is providing direction and technical support to the producer representatives on the working group and is talking to producers across the province through the Industry Leadership Advisory Council. Now our next steps will be to establish a provincial coordinating body and possibly a farm and ranch safety association to guide the awareness, education, and training activities that will truly create a culture of safety on farms and ranches, making all workers, not just paid employees, more safe and healthy.
The Earl's announcement was the latest example of how we need to improve our consumer confidence and public trust. This can be termed as social license. Social license is one of the new, least understood terms in the industry right now. Our whole sustainability efforts are to maintain and gain more social license. We may question whether marketing initiatives from companies like McDonald's, Earl's, and A&W are actually created from consumer demand or from trying to gain a market advantage. What we can't question is the industry's need to show and verify the practices that most producers are using already. The need to gain more social license is the reason for the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. After the McDonald's pilot project ended, producers will be able to be verified sustainable through the indicators developed by the Canadian Roundtable and verified by the Verified Beef Production Plus in the areas of animal health, animal welfare, environment, and biosecurity. An industry-wide sustainability verification will help us gain our social license, which will keep us competitive both nationally and internationally. The need to increase industry funding was the main topic of conversation at last year's meetings. We were given clear direction by the delegates at all of the fall meetings as well as the AGM to increase the national levy from $1 to $2.50, and to return the provincial currently refundable service charge of $2 to non-refundable service charge of $2, with the retained earnings to be used solely for marketing, research, and industry collaboration. We've been working with government and industry partners on this, but I would encourage you to contact your MLAs and explain to them the need for a non-refundable service charge in Alberta so we can fund our industry.
I'm Charlie Christie. I'm the current finance chair for the Alberta Beef Producers. Upon review of our 2015-2016 financial statements, it was deemed that there was a $10 million of income. $4.2 million of that income was for expenses to run the operation. $3.4 million went to the Beef Cattle Research Council and Canada Beef. That is a non-refundable levy of $1 an animal. Of that $1, ABP has chosen to send 80 cents to Canada Beef and 20 cents to the Beef Cattle Research Council. ABP issued 817 service charge refunds of approximately $2.3 million for the 2 refund periods. This represented roughly 34% of the service charge revenue collected. The impact of service charge refunds is increased by reductions in government investments in key industry development areas and lost opportunities to leverage industry investments with the funding that is available. ABP is a strong and viable organization that is able to speak and work effectively for cattle producers because of the large number of producers who leave their checkoff funds with us. In order to budget effectively, the board has allocated $4.98 million to operations for the 2016-2017 year, based on retained checkoff revenue and unspent funds from the past year. The breakdown of these funds results in 32% of these funds go to national policy and trade advocacy programs. Our cattle industry is reliant on trade, and market access remains essential for our success. ABP should be actively involved in developing strategies to ensure Alberta's producers are effectively represented in national or provincial programs and policies. Through ABP and the Canadian Cattlemen's Association, policy and trade advocacy lobbying efforts will continue with federal, provincial, and local governments, as will our U.S. and international market access efforts. 12% is allocated to organizational expenses. This area includes the cost of having a democratic organization in which all producers are equal and have the opportunity for input into the policy setting process. The cost of having elected representatives, a board of directors, an annual report, and annual and semi-annual general meetings. ABP business is conducted under the direction of the board of directors, supported by councils and committees and working groups. 40% is allocated to operational expenses. This area reflects expenses related to ABP's mandate in the priority areas of policy, communications, marketing and education, production, research, stewardship, and animal health and welfare. The large investment of these funds in these areas reflects their importance of the competitiveness of our industry and the prosperity of our producers. The remaining 16% is allocated to administrative expenses. This area reflects the expenses incurred to provide the infrastructure needed to support the business conducted by ABP. In closing, I'd just like to mention my personal thoughts on our staff at ABP. We are blessed with an exemplary staff that are very engaged in our industry. Their dedication is second to none, and on behalf of all producers, and I'm a producer myself, I want to thank them for their continued dedication.
Well, with the mandatory country of origin labeling dispute in December, we were finally successful in getting the U.S. Congress to fully repeal MCOOL. So it was completely eliminated. So we're back to a normally functioning North American market. Now, for Alberta producers, they spent close to $2 million through our efforts in the legal fund, but MCOOL was costing our industry about $600 million a year. This summer, we were very pleased as the new government was working with the President of Mexico. They finally announced that we have full access to Mexico again. We'd been restricted under 30-month. This now opened it up to over 30-month beef and fully normalized trade. And Mexico's typically our second largest export market. If you go back close to 18 months ago when we found a case of BSE, the Korean market closed. That was supposed to be a temporary suspension according to the protocol we have with them. Well, it took close to 10 months, and it was late December last year when they finally opened after a lot of effort both from industry and from the government of Canada. We have been over there. We're trying to renegotiate that protocol. There's no reason that that market should close for any period of time. Same thing happened with Taiwan. In July, Taiwan finally reopened, which for both those markets, they're high quality, high value markets, so they're of particular interest in our export strategy. We are seeing Japan intent on approving the TPP, and it's very uncertain and probably doubtful that the U.S. is going to approve the TPP in the near future. We talked quite a bit about Plan B. First of all, we need our government to approve TPP, and they're still going through consultations. Secondly, we wanted to look at a couple of options. We have bilateral negotiations with Japan, so we have the ability to move ahead, and we could possibly use the TPP as the template for those negotiations. Or can we sit down with the rest of the countries in the TPP and say, okay, let's change the provisions for it to come into effect so that we could move ahead without the U.S., but use that to try and get the U.S. to reconsider politically where they need to move and approve the deal more quickly. Of course, one of the big changes over the past year is we have a new government. Very quickly, we held a reception in Ottawa in December. We had our executive attend there, and a number of provinces, including Alberta beef producers, took part in that reception. So we met with the new Minister of Agriculture in Prince Edward Island, and since that time we've traveled with the Minister of Trade, we've traveled with the Minister of Agriculture, and having those really strong relationships are very important as we move ahead. We're able to very effectively emphasize those things that are important for Canada's beef cattle industry. There are a range of customers that want to know more about where their beef is sourced, how it is raised. And with the Verified Beef Program, which has been in place for many years, we've added 3 modules to it. One is the biosecurity, which is very important for animal health efforts. The second one is the animal care module. It's really one of the very best programs and leading programs in the world in that area. And the third one is environment. All of those things are very important to sustainability. The other issue that we've been working very hard on is on the labor issue. And while in the current conditions there's some more labor available, we know it's going to tighten up when you look at the demographics, and it's been particularly serious in our packing and processing industry. We've been working very closely with both federal and provincial governments to try and change some of the procedures, and more importantly, create more flexibility so that we can bring in foreign workers for a longer period of time. In most cases, we want them to become permanent residents of Canada. And we're going to need those employees if we're going to meet the labor requirements in our industry. We're thrilled with the first Canadian Beef Industry Conference. We'd sort of pictured that, ideally we'd get 500 people, and we had over 640 paid registrants at it. We had tremendous youth involvement in it. All of it was to try and bring more of these groups into one location so that we can communicate more, we can connect better, and we're looking forward to year 2. It'll be back in Calgary. This past year, there's been quite a bit of movement on the national beef strategy, particularly on the checkoff side. What we've seen is virtually in every province, they've approved the national strategy and are planning to move forward. We're hearing there are a number of provinces that may be ready as early as late spring in 2017 to start moving ahead and putting changes in effect and increasing the checkoff to start to feed that into the national strategy. As we move forward, it becomes more important every day as we see some of the changes we've seen in the market this year. We're back to how do we capture more value there? How do we continue to find more efficiencies in our industry? And already we're seeing some great benefits. And those are the good news stories that as we move forward, we hope to see more and more of with the national beef strategy.
Looking forward to next year. I'm really excited about our sustainability efforts, and I am really confident we will be able to fund our industry better than we are right now.